Welcome back, my friends, to the D-Rate the Hate podcast. I am your host, Wilk of WilksWorld.com, and I am so incredibly grateful that you are taking the time to join me for another powerful DTH episode. Friends, at the D-Rate the Hate podcast, it's all about bettering the world one attitude at a time. See, we did not create the hate, but with your help, we can derate the hate. That all starts with gratitude and personal accountability. We cannot control everything that happens to us in life, but we can control how we react to it. How we act, how we react, no matter what happens to us, how we react to it makes the difference. Friends, there is only one good thing about a bad attitude, and that is that we have the ability as individuals to change it. Here on the DTH podcast, we strive to bring you great guests and provide tools to do just that. Please be sure to share it with your friends. Subscribe if you haven't done so. Ratings and feedback are always greatly appreciated. And with that, let's get to this week's episode. Friends, do you ever find yourself struggling with self-discipline? I know I find myself struggling all the time with self-discipline. It's something I have to focus on a lot. So when I heard about this week's guest, Zach Mathews, and his book, Climbing Your Self-Discipline Tree, the 3 stages essential for accomplishing any goal, I was definitely intrigued and wanted to know more. Now, Zach is an online intermittent fasting coach, an author, a fellow podcaster, and a public speaker. He's dedicated his life to helping others unlock the benefits of intermittent fasting and show them how to lose weight fast, even with a demanding career. So you're going to want to stay tuned for another great DTH conversation with Zach Mathews, where him and I discuss self-discipline, toxic distractions and time sucks, and the 3 stages essential for accomplishing any goal. And then, of course, we also discuss his specialty, which is intermittent fasting, nutrition, and helping busy entrepreneurs and corporate business people lose those extra pounds that are standing in the way of them living their best life. Stay tuned for another great DTH conversation, my friends. You're not going to want to miss it. And with that, here we go. Zach Mathews, thank you for joining the D-Rate the Hate podcast, man. I appreciate your time.
Wilk, it's a pleasure, man. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, bud. I saw your book, Climbing Your Self-Discipline Tree, and 3 essentials needed to accomplish any goal. And I wanted to talk about self-discipline. Self-discipline is something that so many people struggle with, Zach. And when I saw the notes on this book and I saw the work that you've been doing with your FastNFocus, I really wanted to talk to you. So, Zach, talk me through your book, Climbing Your Self-Discipline Tree. Where did that start? Or talk me through the starting point of that book and how you got started on your self-discipline journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I was telling you before we jumped on here, I used to be a ghostwriter, used to be a copywriter for a living. And so that kind of brought me to, obviously, I was getting paid on what I was doing, right? I was getting paid task for task. I mean, rightly so. You're paid for what you do. That's fair. But in doing that, before my wife and I had our son, that was easy. My time was my own. I could start whenever I wanted. I could end whenever I wanted. And then we had our first son. So suddenly my time was not my own. This little guy was keeping me up till way late in the night, waking me up at weird hours to take care of him, And so suddenly, I just found myself kind of drained. And I mentioned it in the book, there was one time that I was driving to Barnes & Noble. I just told my wife, I was like, I got to take a drive. And, I just started thinking about, my legacy and what I was going to leave for him and, what that was kind of going to look like as a father figure. And I thought, I just thought to myself, like, what am I doing? So that led down this long road of just trying to figure out what good structured self-discipline looked like. But, self-discipline that was, because, faith is very important to me. So something that was structured in that, and then something that would also allow you freedom, that you're not just tied down like hour by hour. And so the only idea I had was to create a questionnaire. I called it my self-discipline survey, and it was just a ton of questions. I sent them to 50 people in my network that I thought represented self-discipline really well. I sent it to 100 people, got 50 of them back. I was just floored by the answers. I mean, it was impressive because most of them had similar answers to the questions I was having. What does healthy self-discipline look like? What things are you looking to cleanse from your life? How do you balance nutrition and exercise? All these questions, and they all kind of lined up similarly. So I was telling my wife about that, and she's like, that seems important, and so I decided, you know what? I've always wanted to write a book anyways. This is about as good of a subject as any. It'll help people. And so I just used the answers from those surveys to make kind of a framework for the book, like the way it looked. And then just went ahead and did a ton of research and using my ghostwriting skills and, made my own book.
Well, I definitely agree with your wife. I mean, it is important. It's incredibly important because, like I said, self-discipline is something that I think so many people today struggle with.
Right.
They struggle with positivity. They struggle with self-doubt. They struggle with fighting their self-saboteurs. As I just had another conversation with another guest on the podcast recently, and that self-discipline I think it's certainly something that I've struggled with my whole life. But the one thing is, Zach, we all have to accept, we all have to realize, and I talk about it often on the podcast, is it's up to us to make each day that we want it, the day that we want it to be.
Yes.
And without that self-discipline, we are often failing ourselves in what we're trying to do or what we're trying to accomplish or the goals that we have set for ourselves. We just don't have the self-discipline to do it. So talk to me about the 3 essential phases, Zach, that you talk about to accomplish or needed to accomplish any of our goals.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 3 stages, like you mentioned earlier. And so the 3 stages are preparation, production, and then persistence. So basically, you're kind of preparing, you're visualizing, setting some goals for yourself. You're kind of taking some time ahead. As the old saying goes, you spend a year planning your wedding, but not many of us take, 5 minutes to plan our next, year of life, and the goals we want to accomplish. And that's really telling about our priorities most times, and so that's the preparation phase is, it consists of just establishing vision, setting concrete, worthwhile goals that are also lofty so that they push us. And then just kind of organizing those goals to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success. And then most importantly to me is, cleansing out the toxic habits. I mean, when you can set all the goals you want, you can tell yourself that you want to make $1 million or you want to change the world. But until you get rid of some of the bad habits you have that are holding you back, it can really derail you, and it's a big reason why most of us don't, get past the plateau, as Earl Nightingale talks about, that plateau of comfort almost, because, we just have these habits that we fall back on. And, our brain is telling us, everything in our brain is telling us, stick to those habits where, if you want to really take that next step, you gotta break those boundaries. And that starts with preparation. So that's the first phase. The second phase is just acting those out. So just taking action, again, something that not most of us do, but just, how can you kind of create like what we were talking about earlier with the freedom and the healthy self-discipline. So that kind of includes, good structured exercise, nutrition plays a factor into that, your well-being, your overall well-being, and how you're going to, just kind of set yourself up for success mentally, physically, and emotionally. And then the last one is just executing, just taking everything that you've done and, now it's time to act on it. Right. The misconception there is that I'm not telling you have to plan and know everything and, and then act. I'm a big proponent of just taking the first step, but it's very important for all of us to just kind of take a 300-foot view and, really challenge ourselves to think, what do you want 1 year down the line? What do you want 5 years, 10 years down the line? And so that's the second phase. And then the final phase there is persistence. So that's just about, it's not if I say in the book, it's not if you face failure, but when you face failure, right? I mean, we don't walk in this life without hitting some valleys along with the peaks. And so it's, it's important to kind of prepare yourself ahead of time. Like, how are you going to tackle those obstacles, and what skills can what tactics and best practices can you use to overcome those obstacles? And that's what the third phase is all about, the persistence phase. Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more then about those toxic distractions,
Sure.
Zach, because toxic distractions, we've all got them.
Right.
they
Yes, you do.
they some are more toxic than others, obviously. For me, I've got mine. Not going to get into them here, but I've got mine. You've got yours. Everybody's got their toxic distractions.
Oh yeah.
So, what's a good example of a toxic distraction? And when one of your clients comes to you and says, Zach, this is what's going on with me.
Mhm.
How do I beat this? And maybe it's something that they really enjoy, but they need to beat it because it's definitely a toxic distraction. So give me an
Yeah.
example, and how do they go about getting beyond it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest one that comes to mind for me, and the one I talk about most prevalently is in the book, is social media. So and that's one that I come into with my clients too. I'll talk about that more in a moment. But social media, I mean, mind you, I was writing the book in smack dab in the middle of COVID, so social media was at an all-time high for we just all kind of felt isolated at the time. So I really wanted to tackle that subject hard. And I mean, I mentioned in the book, like, social media, it's a beautiful thing when you think about it. Like, it connects people all over the world. I can talk to someone, and the other side of the world, and we can just have a full on conversation. So that part of it is beautiful, but the keeping up with me and look at me, and the just the mixture of the negative comments, and plus just the everything else, just the how do I want to put it, like, you just see that you feel like people are doing way better than you, even though they're just taking a picture of like the best moment in their day, and so that's one that I tackle hard. And I even give a few exercises for how to kind of cut out what I call time wasting apps. So there's a couple exercises for that in the book. But as far as my clients, the biggest one that I've run into is, I always say that Netflix is my arch rival when it comes to my intermittent fasting coaching. Because it really is, like, it's even something as simple as sitting down on the couch and watching Netflix. Me and my wife, we watch New Girl almost every night on Netflix. We love Netflix too.
Okay.
But if you let it, like, something like that can just ignite a bunch of bad habits that, for what I do for a living is weight loss and helping people lose weight. If you're sitting down watching Netflix for 3 hours a night, then, you're probably reaching for a bag of chips because your favorite show's on, and your brain thinks, oh, look, we're watching Schitt's Creek. It's, maybe we should reach for some chips, or, something like that.
It's easy to start binge watching and then binge eating, right? Binge
That's
watching
exactly
and binge eating, they go hand in hand. Yeah, fortunately, that's one of the I guess one of the toxic distractions I've been able to overcome is watching a bunch of television. My wife and I, we very, very seldom do we watch television anymore at all. We don't have Netflix anymore. Nothing against Netflix, but yeah, that's one of the toxic distractions that we had to weed out of our life. Is just, we don't have cable. We've got some streaming services, but nothing that we're binge watching. But yeah, that
Right.
binge watching, binge eating, it's a time suck on people, and it's brutal. So I get it, man. I get how people can I get how that can be a huge toxic distraction. And then social media, I'm constantly talking about how social media is, I say it on the podcast, but my description of social media in general is a dumpster fire of hate, lies, and misinformation. Because but I like where you went with it when you said, because it does have some good qualities, Zach, and I can't take that away from it. It's got some great qualities. It's brought a lot of people together that never, that otherwise would have never had an opportunity to speak or get to know each other, or have those conversations. But I think you're right. It does. People do get stuck or mired down in that idea that those little moments in time that people are posting are the whole deal.
Right.
They're that's the entirety of that other person's life when it's really not. So it gives people this false perception and false um kind of a false idol to look at when they're
Yeah.
trying to do something for themselves, and if they can't live up to it, it kind of has that negative effect on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about something that happened recently, just to me as an example, was we we had the opportunity to go to a sports game here in Tampa, and you know, we got tickets from a friend, so we went. You know, they were, so we sat in a really cool location, not like club, you know, but you know, good seat in the near the field, and took a picture of it. Obviously, like, you're going to take a picture of that, post that on Instagram, you know. And so then the next day, I see one of my coworkers in the office, and he's like, "Dude, how much did you pay for that? You know, how much did you pay for those?" I was like, "Oh no, like, a friend gave those to us. Otherwise, we would have never spent that much money." But, you know, in reality, I mean, on his side of things, and I'm not saying he was thinking this, but maybe, you know, he was like, "Dang, like, Zach makes way more than me because I can't afford those seats," or, you know, wow, like, Zach's living a way better life than I am. When in reality, like you said, it was just a couple hours of my life. It's certainly not the norm. So it's about perception, and it's just really my biggest concern with my clients as far as social media is just the time we waste on it, you know, and the self-doubt that can creep in because of it. So I try to limit their exposure to it, because that does have an effect on our perception of our goals. I mean, it can even, you know, I mean, it can beat you down so much that you might even think, what's the use, you know, which is a big hurdle to overcome. Obviously, that's a part of it. And I always tell people, like, you know, I'm a big proponent of just purging your apps from your phone. I mean, I commend you. It sounds like you and your wife did that with Netflix. You know, it's better to just rip the Band-Aid off, you know,
Right.
and you'll see that you don't need it, and you'll see that it's kind of, for lack of a better term, worthless to have. But it just, that, again, that goes into just taking action, taking a small step, and knowing that you're going to be better for it.
Well, and it's amazing too how quickly. Another thing I quit doing for personal reasons is watching football. I was somebody who watched football religiously my whole life, and I absolutely loved it. I still love it, but I don't watch football anymore for various reasons. And my wife had made mention of the fact that the other day that, you know, she kind of misses the fact that we would stop and actually watch football for at least 3 hours a week during football season.
Yeah.
But all the other stuff that we can actually get done now in that 3 hours. I mean, it's amazing. Now I look back and I'm like, how did I ever stop all this other stuff that I was doing for 3 hours to watch football on a Sunday, you know?
Right.
And but it's amazing. And the same thing with Netflix, or I don't care if it's Netflix or social media browsing or whatever. It's amazing how quickly that time that you would waste doing those things fills up with hopefully more productive things. Hopefully you're not just replacing one toxic distraction with another, right, Zach?
True. Yeah. That's not what we're talking about here.
So, okay, so somebody comes to you and says, "I need self-discipline. I am a mess. I have no self-discipline. I need to know, where do I start, Zach? What do I got to do?"
Yeah, I would start with just kind of reflecting inward, not to get too, just kind of psychological, but you really need to take a look inside, and just, kind of ask yourself, what do I want to accomplish? Like, what's my purpose here? Because I find that a lot of times when we do kind of tend to go back to the ebb and flow of, like, just the normalcy of, like, Netflix and things like we're talking about here, it's because we're lost. We don't know where we want to head. We don't know what we're ultimately working towards. So it just kind of seems like you're going to your 9 to 5 just to pay the bills. And, you're just kind of wasting your free time because you don't know, like, for example, if you think you have a goal to lose X number of pounds in 90 days, then you know what you need to do to work towards that. You need to exercise, you need to eat right. Maybe you need help with that. So you need to seek out, a mentor, or, a coach or someone like that. Shameless plug there. But if you don't have those goals, if you never just take like 5-10 minutes to tell yourself, hey, this is a goal of mine, then I mean, how do you take action? You know what I mean? And that time will be filled with something like you just talked about, it'll be filled with something that's unproductive. So that would be my advice. Maybe even ask yourself, like, what do I want to get accomplished in 30 days?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What about, actually, let's go the other way. Let's say, what do I want to accomplish in a year? Okay. What can I do in the next 90 days to create some good momentum towards that?
Sure.
All right. Well, what do I do for the next 30 days to create momentum for the 90 days? You know what I mean? So, and lastly, where do I start tomorrow? I think that's the most important question, so sorry, I cut you off there, Wilk, but I just think it's dialing it back down is a good first step.
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, I think you're dead spot on right there with, it's got to start with inward reflection.
Right.
You've got to have the goals. You've got to have, as was said in another recent interview I did, those goals got to be specific, Zach.
Yes.
And so I think you're exactly right. Where do you want to be a year from now or 5 years from now? And starting to work on your goal for a year from now in 364 days is very piss poor planning. It's not going to execute well, right?
Right.
So I think you're right. I think you're dead spot on. I think you got to look at where you want to be a year from now, and then set. I don't care if it's quarterly goals or whatever, like you said. What do I got to do in the next 90 days to put myself in a good position to accomplish what I want to accomplish by this time next year?
Yes.
And then break it down further. What do I got to do in that 30 days to be at that 90-day mark?
Right.
So no, I think it's awesome. I think it's great advice, and I think you're heading right in the right direction. You got to be specific. You got to know what you want, and then you got to inwardly reflect on where am I at today, and how am I going to get to where I need to be in 30, 60, 90 days, so that 365 days from now, I'm not sitting here on the couch watching Netflix, wishing that I had done something a year ago to get myself started.
Yeah, that's the biggest killer. And I think, you and I have kind of covered it, but I mentioned in the book, and I didn't make this, this is pretty universally known, but the measure of SMART goals, SMART stands for specific, like you said, measurable, like I was kind of talking about, just measuring those out and giving good hard dates. A for achievable, R for relevant, and then T for time-based, and it's if you can accomplish those 5 things, if you can just tell yourself one goal and then just break it down by SMART, then you are ahead of 95% of people that may even tell themselves that they have that same goal as you, but you're more inclined to accomplish it because you've taken time to just lay out some steps. Yeah, absolutely.
No, that's absolutely right, man. No, it's great advice. It's good work. So, all right, Zach, let's take this back to what you're doing now. I know you get your Fast and Focus podcast, you do your coaching and things like that. So what I want to do is I want you to talk a little bit more about the Fast and Focus, what your focus is with Fast and Focus, and then how the DTH listeners, if they choose to do so, how they can get in contact with you and take advantage of all the good advice you got to give.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Fast and Focus, it's kind of like what it sounds like. No, it is what it sounds like. It's coaching and content based around intermittent fasting. Basically, I help entrepreneurs and business owners and business leaders, just kind of burn fat, lose weight, and get back into fighting shape. So we have 3 pillars here. So it's fitness, fasting, and then food, aka nutrition. So those 3 elements are heavily involved in our curriculum. Fasting is kind of the backbone of that. So it's, the first couple of weeks is all about just educating people on what that looks like, how they can implement it, really how simple it is to implement. And it's just so easy. It complements the modern work life and just so well. I mean, just because, I could get into it. If you listen to the podcast, I break it down every week, so I won't fill our time here with it, but it's something definitely to consider if you've been, interested in losing weight, or, you just kind of not even like, I'm not even talking like 20, 30 pounds, maybe you just kind of want to get back in a better shape. You're used to be in a certain shape and you kind of let yourself go, whatever, intermittent fasting can be a great way to kind of kickstart that process again. So to answer your question, Fast and Focus is coaching and content centered around just that. So we offer The podcast is kind of just a free content to answer questions every single week. I try to tackle just one question. For example, by the time we record this, I will have released an episode called The Benefits of Intermittent Fasting. And you can guess what that episode is going to be talking about. So that's kind of what you can expect there. Then on the coaching side, I offer one-on-one coaching. I'm looking to get include some group coaching here soon, but one-on-one is what I do right now, just to focus and build a community and help people meet them where they're at. Have a few different packages for that. So if you guys are interested, you can check that out. Just go to my website. That's FastN as in nutritionfocus.com. So FastNFocus.com. You can find more information there. There's also a free ebook that people can download on that website. So they just enter in FastNFocus.com, go down to the bottom, and you'll see it. You can't miss it. And just enter in your email. It's all yours, free of charge. Yeah. So I do coaching. And then the other form of content is just ebooks. Like you mentioned, we've been talking about my paperback book here, Climb Your Self-Discipline Tree. That's available for sale. I also just released a digital guidebook on do-it-yourself intermittent fasting. So if people want to check it out there, that's a great starting point too. All of it is available on the website, FastNFocus.com.
Awesome, man. The D-Rate the Hate podcast is all about bettering the world one attitude at a time. Health and staying healthy is certainly an important part of bettering our individual lives. And by bettering our individual lives, we're always going to be better in the world around us. So,
yes, absolutely.
When people get an opportunity to get great advice, and I'm definitely somebody who should probably be seeking out advice on getting healthier. There's no question about that. But I'm not the only one, and there's a lot of people out there that are. So,
oh no! Oh yeah.
We live in a country where we got a lot of people that are probably a little big around the middle, and it's always good advice to find ways to get healthier, and it just helps us all live better lives. So yeah. I appreciate it, Zach. Good info, and everybody can find out more about Fast and Focus on the show notes from this episode, and find out all the ways that they can get a hold of Zach Mathews. I appreciate it, Zach. Thank you very much. Keep doing what you're doing, bud. You're an inspiration, and look forward to speaking with you again.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Will. This was fun, man.
Friends, if there's anything in this episode that provided exceptional value to you, please make sure to hit that share button. Share it with your friends, share it far and wide. And of course, if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe right from our website so you can get the D-Rate the Hate podcast sent to your email inbox every week. So this is Wilk wrapping up for the week, saying get out there, be kind to one another, be grateful for everything that you've got, and remember it's up to you to make each and every day the day that you want it to be. If there is something that you would like to share with me, you can catch me on most social media platforms, or you can email me directly, wilk@wilksworld.com. With that, my friends, I am going to back on out of here, and we will catch you next week. Take care.